I'm Derek. I'm a grade 4 recovering addict. So one thing I normally don't do in an NA meeting is I do not get drug specific. Like that or a higher power situation. I do not get specific. Or as far as war stories, I don't try to tell war stories either. Like that's a no-no. All three of them is big no-nos to me. So, but tonight, in certain situations, I'm gonna get just a little drug specific and maybe a war story or two, but just so you could kind of relate. And maybe even throw in the higher power there or something, we'll see what happens. But, I'm going to get right to it. I went ahead and wrote it down, man, because, a lot of things happened, and I was just like, man, I didn't want to go vaguely, and it's my first time doing this, so I just wanted to kind of give y'all the best experience, strength, and hope that I could. And so that's what I got for you. So my dad, he was an alcoholic. He was also a welder. He was the type that he would live behind nobodies or like cattlemen's in a Winnebago. He was always on the road, but whenever he wasn't on the road, he was in his Winnebago behind a bar. Even when we went to go see him or whatever, we would go and spend the night with him. And, on the weekends or whatever, we'd go to the lake or races or something like that. Whenever he'd come in 3 and 4 months at a time, we hadn't seen him, and then he'd come in town and we'd see him, and we'd take off and we'd just get to see him for couple of days, but wherever it was ported at, we were going to be at the bar. We were going to be somewhere close by where he could get his alcohol. And the only role models, the best role models that I had was from his parents, was my grandparents. They're like married 50 years, and they had a house, and it was just a basic trailer house. But to me as a kid, that was a mansion. Like it was so perfect. And there was a car, and and there was 2 cars, and they had a riding lawnmower, and they were married, and they didn't drink or use drugs or smoke cigarettes or anything like that. So they were like the best role models I ever had. My mom, she was a good mom at one time. When I was real little, I could almost remember like there was something there that was good about it. But and also from what I was told from my bigger sister and stuff, that she was a good mom. But I remember very young, I was probably only 2 or 3. I remember we would be babysitted, and one day she just came home early. And immediately, she was home early, and there was a different kind of vehicle, and I knew something just in my instincts that something was going to be different right then and there. And when I went outside, and boom, she came out, and she was already drinking, and she had a weird voice to her. And then she had a male with her. And so that was my first time meeting my stepdad at the time. And so, I don't know how much time had passed, but I remember I had tore up my toenail one time, and it dropped the weight, and they ripped it off and everything. And it was a few days later, I was riding a scooter and tore it open again. It was bleeding. My big sister carried me up to the door, and she was trying to get my mom to open up the door and stuff, but my mom wasn't having it anymore. Like, she would make us stay outside for long periods of time and drinking all night and stuff like that. And so at an early age, I remember that. And it wasn't too long after that I was at the neighbor's house across the street getting babysitted. And I remember them saying, "Oh my God, did he do that to her?" And immediately as a little kid, and I could see them trying to shield me from it, but I was still able to make it to the window. And he was carrying my mom's lifeless body across the yard into his truck. And later on, I learned as an adult that he had jumped on her and broke her 7 of her ribs and collapsed her lung and stuff like that. And so that was the beginning of knowing my stepdad. And so it became more and more. The partying was all the time, and we moved into his house, and it was like every weekend it was drinking, and it was us being stuck outside for long periods of time. And my mom always had this weird voice about her. It was just a change. Something was different about her voice. I knew something was up. As soon as I heard that voice, I knew things were going to be good, but I knew things were going to be bad, immediately. And so my big sister, at one time, it was a spring break, and so she was much older than us by about 10 years. And she went to go visit her dad, and she never came back. And I waited all day for her, man. I was just waiting, because she was kind of like a safe haven for me. She was, and I couldn't understand, but what it was is because she knew more than what was going on than what we knew. And so I didn't really understand that. It got to the point after she left, that's when my stepdad would start beating her every weekend. I mean, it was just as soon as the beers would come out, he would be beating her. That's how we woke up every night, with my mom screaming, crying. I mean, he was a big guy. My mom was a real little lady, and he would just beat her every weekend. And I remember the cross the street neighbors, they told me they knew what was going on. And she told me one day, she said, hey, we know what's going on. And if you come across the street, we'll call the cops on him. And we'll get him taken care of. So one night, man, he's beating her up, dude. And I was like, okay, tonight's the night. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to save my mom. And I ran out the door, running past his dad, who sat on the couch, not even caring that my mom was getting beat up in the bedroom. He didn't. I ran back in because I wanted to make sure it still was happening. It still was happening. So I ran back out, and that was the first time I called the cops on him. I was only 5 years old. And they came, and it was a lot different back in the day for domestic violence. So they come and they pick that guy up, and they take him to another house, and boom, nothing would happen. He wouldn't go to jail or anything. So that happened continuously. Every time we called the cops, and it would just happen and happen and happen. One time that I remember that I tried to change the way I feel, I was real young. I was only like 5. And I remember that all the adults was drinking and smoking out in the front yard. And every time they just get done with their cigarette and they flick it, and they get done with their cigarette and they flick it. And I was like, man, I really want to try that out. And so like when they flicked that cigarette, I went over there, I tried it out, and I was like, oh, but it was only a little bit. So I assumed that, oh, well, I need more of the cigarette. I need like a whole cigarette, not just a little piece of one. So that was like the first time that I started like, that's the first time that I started trying something new, trying to be like them. I remember the first time that I smelled weed, we was in a party, and it just started going around, and I was instantly attracted from one individual to another individual. It was weird for me because they were passing it this time, not that one individual was holding it, and the smell was just intoxicating, and I was like, man, I wanted to see what that was all about. Eventually, my mom, she just kept getting beat, and then it got to the point to where that she finally did grow enough balls and leave. And so we moved over to 15th Street over there in them white houses. And that's when I started figuring out my mom had a drug problem, because drugs was everywhere over there. And I remember the first time that I realized that she had a drug problem, that I knew something was going on, is because we were hungry all month, man. We were hungry. There was no food in the house. And all of a sudden, we got all these food stamps. And even as a kid, I knew that we had hundreds of dollars worth of food stamps, that it wasn't just a small amount. And probably because of the conversation going on in the house, but she had sold all the food stamps. We ain't got all these groceries and everything, and boom, brought them into our house. And the little kid that I was playing with at the time, who was teaching me about gangs, he was teaching me about the West Side Crips and the grapes and Bloods and stuff. But we're hanging out outside doing that while my mom was filling up the fridge with groceries. And then all of a sudden that night, all the groceries was gone because she was paying the crack dealer them groceries. So it was like, that's when I noticed that something was, I started kind of putting it together. We moved across the street from my aunt's not too long after that. And it just got worse, man. It just got worse because we moved down the street from the cartel. And so what they used our house for was they used it to cook crack. And so our house became pretty much just a trap house. There was whores in and out all day. They would turn tricks in my bed. There was my first job. My first job was literally this guy. He came in, they were cooking it up, and he was like, here's my pager, and here's enough money for the cell phone. You go up to the payphone, you call each one of these numbers, you find out the address and how much they want, you come back. Every time you do that, I'll give you 50 cents. So it was like one of my first jobs to like make money, and I can still remember that to this day, you know, because I remember at that point my mom wasn't scared of what was going on anymore. It was all across our kitchen table. It was everywhere. And the people was nonstop. It was all the time, in and out of the house all night long. It was, like I said, tricks going all night long. I started figuring out, like, I didn't know what was going on, but I knew kind of what was happening inside my bedroom. And so that kind of, it was a turning point. And so immediately I found the Mexicans down the street about the same time too. So they were accepting, and they were like, they were doing their thing. They were gangster, and they wasn't hooked on this kind of drug. And so I was like just kind of hanging out with them, and they started to, smoke a little weed, and I was like, wow, So to be a part of and to be accepted, I smoked a little too. And I remember the first time it made me sick. It made me nauseated. I threw up. I was nasty, and I was sick. And I went home and threw up. Went to sleep. As soon as I woke up, though, instantly I wanted more. And so from that point on, right then and there, I started chasing that every day. I wanted to be at their house. I knew if I could get $2, I could get some. It was just one of the things. I was 9 years old, and so that became a daily thing. Now, at that time, a lot of people used spray paint. So whenever there was no weed available, we would just everybody would just go steal spray paint. We'd go to AutoZone, or we'd go get some octane booster or gasoline or whatever, and we would just be stupefied for hours. And I'm 9 years old, man, just hanging around with everybody like that. The thing was I never was going to do anything white because, well, in my words, white, I wasn't going to do any crack because I knew what it did to you. I seen what it did to my mom. And we were living in the house, and I mean, the house was always filthy. There was dishes that would be piled up. Nothing was ever clean. There would be on the table, there'd be 1,500 lighters. None of them worked. For real. There would be little, it got worse where there would be little stash spots for little broken pipes. And so there would be and we never had clean clothes. It was hard to go to school because my shoes were dirty. My socks was filthy. My clothes was filthy. I wore the same thing. It was hard to relate with people outside of school. I already at a young age didn't want to go to school anymore. I was scared. I wasn't really scared. I just wouldn't want to be accepted. And I knew I was living in trash, and I didn't want people to know what I was coming from. And my mom, just to give you a little background, she was also, her spirituality she was a white witch. So she believed in witchcraft. That was her thing. And so, of course, growing up with Mexicans and stuff, I learned a lot of witchcraft from them, too. I've seen that a lot as well in my life as well. Eventually, we started to get kicked out from whatever was going on, whatever was happening with my mom. So we moved down to Sherman, and everything was going to change. Well, nothing changed. We went right into a homeless shelter. We lived in a homeless shelter for a long time. Something happened in there, probably drug related. We moved out of that situation, moved into a roommate situation. Something probably drug related happened then. We was back out, boom, next thing you know, we're back in Amarillo again. It's the same thing. It just progressively just continues to get worse and worse. So at that situation, I was real young, and I just wanted to be a part of. And looking back, yes, I'm the one that accepted this. I'm the one that said yes to it. But I had a sexual encounter with a much older individual did I want a part of it? I thought I did. I wanted to be a part of. I was saying yes, but as soon as you say yes to something, you really don't know what you're saying yes to. I knew that at the end of it was a wrong thing to happen, but as a young adult just trying to get attention and everything, I said yes to that sexual encounter. It was wrong in all aspects, but I was just trying to be a part of, and I gave myself away that day. It wasn't, I say that it's my fault, but it really wasn't my fault. It was just taking advantage of somebody that was 9 years old, So that kind of happened too, and I'll just throw that in there just because I want to be able to relate with you. It's something that I've never told anybody else inside these rooms. I've never told anybody else in my life. The only person I've ever told is my sponsor. But I felt like that was something to share with the group because I know a lot of people could relate to that situation. And so we've all been there. And so that's experience, strength, and hope for you. So then we were in Amarillo for a while, a little longer. Things started getting crazy again. We started losing our house again. I know as an adult, I know what happened is CPS got involved because they came and asked us at the school, what does your mom go to the White Barn for? Well, I knew what my mom went to the White Barn for, but instantly I was already trying to lie and hide the situation because I knew something bad was going to happen if they found out why she was going to the White Barn. But I knew what it was. And eventually, just within a few weeks, boom, now we're moving to New York. So we move up to Troy, New York, because everything's going to be better now that we moved 40 hours away from here. So we moved over there, and instantly when we got in there, I knew immediately when we walked into people's house, oh man, this is the same kind of situation that when we were just in. And so Of course, that's exactly what it was. My mom was right back to getting high with them. And that night, the very first night we were there, the SWAT team came in and the CPS came in and took all them people's kids. And the only reason they didn't take me and my sister is because we had just moved there that very day. And so they sent my mom to a homeless shelter, so we stayed in a homeless shelter for a long time again. And finally, she got this little government assistance. My mom didn't want to work. Like, she was just a live to use to live. Like, she didn't want to work. So she would just use government assistance, and when she wasn't using, she was sleeping. And when she wasn't sleeping, she was using. And so finally, we got this nice little house, 1 year a lease. And when I remember the lady telling me it was a 1 year lease and stuff, I was thinking, all right, man, maybe this will correct our lives for 1 year. And so, of course, it was good for a little bit, but then my mom started gaining the people and the connections again. And so next thing you know, the house was just a trap house again. I was back to smoking all the time and paint when I didn't have it. And so that went on for a little bit until we got kicked out of there for a drug-related situation. It was just overwhelmed. It was a crack house, man, and it was overwhelming, and so they kicked us out for it. And so the next place we went is we moved over to the projects, man. And it was literally just like you see in the TV shows, man. It was four buildings. There are 13 floors high. There's at least 9 apartments all on it. Everybody's black. There's not one white person. We had one other white family that was there, and we would play football with them every day, man. And it was all black people. And the thing is that like once you're like labeled, you know, you're drug specific over there, then that's at the bottom, you know, they're at the bottom. And so like to like have my mom, and like that's like top secret. Like I don't want anybody to know, because once this guy knows, this building's gonna know, that building's gonna know, everybody's gonna know, and then all my friends are gonna know, and it got even worse. Like I don't want to go to school. I was already hooked on weed to the point that I would do anything for it. I was skipping school. I wasn't going. It was just anything and everything I would just do to feed my habits. Started breaking into cars, robbing cars, joyriding, stuff like that. It was just the little stuff to get it. And at this time, I'm only 11 or 12 years old. Finally, I got in trouble for not going to school because it had been so many times. My mom thought I was gone, but I just was skipping out every day and going doing my own thing. And finally found out that I wasn't going to school, had to go to court and stuff. Well, right after that, the very next day, right after going to court, man, the cops knocked on the door again. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do this time? Like, I thought they were going to catch me up for something else that I'm doing, because I'm already in so much trouble legally that I thought it was, oh, here it is again. Well, no, it ended up being that my dad had died. My dad died 2 days before my 13th birthday. And so that was like, at that point, it wasn't painful, because I was like, man, forget that dude, man. I hated him, man, and I'm glad he's gone and stuff. But as a little bit more time progresses, you're like, you do get heartbroken a little bit. You start to grieve in a different way. It might be anger at first, but you do start to grieve. And so the only thing that I got from it, though, is that I knew at that point, just from hearing stuff, that because my dad died, I would get a check. And so I was thinking, well, now that we're going to get some actual income in the house, man, maybe life can be different. Things will get better. And so I thought that for a little bit. Also, I found out that immediately, because that was happening, there was all this talk that we were going to go back to Amarillo. And I was thinking, oh, man, all my friends, like all these guys that I was running around with, you know. And I thought, well, all right, man, this is going to be great. I get to go back to Amarillo. I get to tell them this story. And we get all this money, and then everything's going to be better. So we moved back to Amarillo. Right back to the same people. And the house that we moved into, it was cool for a little bit. But eventually my mom started making them connections again, and it started getting worse. And when she got our first checks, like, we didn't know, but they were like $4,000 a piece. She burned through it, almost 10 grand in a week. We didn't have no food in the fridge again. We didn't have no food. We didn't have nothing, man. It was trash. The whole house was trash. There was no food. So immediately I'm still smoking. I'm still running around trying to, meet people in my own type of situation. Well, end up meeting my baby mama at the time. I'm only 14. So I meet her, end up getting her pregnant. And in the middle of this, she tells me one night while I'm out spooking some paint, she's like, oh, I do meth. And she's walking around acting like she's all methed out, man. And I'm like, well, it's not crack or anything. I'll do some. Instantly, that very first time that I did it, man, I mean, I stayed up for like 24 hours straight, and immediately I was like, that day, I'm like, how do I get some more of that? Like, how? It was like instantly, I was hooked. So we went on for that. I started doing that for a little bit, here and there, here and there, here and there, here and there. We had a baby. In that process of being there, I ended up meeting this connect that also cooked. So now I'm going to help him do whatever he needs to do to make more. And it just became a cycle. That was what I did every day to help him. Filters, batteries, drain cleaner, whatever we need, brake fluid, whatever we needed, whatever he needed me to do, I was willing to do. Only 15. And so I'm feeding a habit and feeding a nasty habit. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then because of being up for long periods of time and being only 15 and having the abuse issues behind, I mean, we could blame it on anything at any time, but I became very abusive too. And I'm sure anybody in here has been there to where they've stayed up too long, they became abusive, or they were in an abusive situation. And so that became all the time. We were either arguing, fighting, or yelling, screaming, throwing things, breaking things. It was just constantly, man. And eventually, you know, she ended up moving out with the kiddo. CPS, whatever happened, she was using too. So at that time, I was still about 15, and that dude went to jail. So drugs became harder to get. It was back to older ways. It was back to just a different type of situation. So buddies of mine, I'm still running around with other Mexicans. They said, let's freebase some lines. Well, it's not crack cocaine. So, okay, as long as it ain't crack, man. So we started freebasing, storing lines, the whole run. It's cocaine, man. So meth coke. That's all we're doing every day. We're stealing, breaking into cars, breaking into houses, whatever we got to do. So in the midst of that, I met another Mexican dude, and what he did was he moved powder to the dudes that sold rock so that he would get paid in rock because he had became addicted to crack in the meantime. So this dude had it like truckloads of it. It was nothing for him, and it was real gangster, you know. It wasn't like we were just like, you know, trying to fiend and hustle up for a 20 or, you know, like steal your kiddo's, you know, Christmas clothes so you could go and get some more. It wasn't like that. It was real, it was different. And so I was like, oh man, I could do that. So I started smoking some crack. And I mean, just like with anything, at first you're like, oh yeah, that was cool, you know? And I was like, but I ain't gonna get addicted or anything like that. It's just a little crack, you know? And so we just kept smoking and smoking and smoking. Next thing you know, it was like, damn, I want some more crack. And so it got to the point that I was just as addicted to that as addicted to anything else. And it was just real surprising because at that point my mom was still doing her thing. So I'd go over to her house and it was everywhere in there. And though that wasn't my main drug of choice, my drug of choice is weed, but I just did everything else. And so I'm like, well, I'm at my mom's house and I try to get a little piece here, try to get a little piece there. But one night, man, it was like, okay, I'm at my last straw, man. I'm about to come up on a lick, man. I'm about to, you know what? My aunt's in the hospital, and I know she got some items in the house. Like, I'm going to break in, and I'm going to get me something, and I'm going to supply this. So I was at my mom's house, and she gave me a little hit of crack, man. Boom. And I'm like, all right, Mom, I've decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to go hit a lick on this house. All right, son, hold on just a second. I got you. Boom. She gives me a black mask. Boom, boom. Gives me a black sweater. Hooks me up with a pillowcase. You need anything else? No, Mom, I'm good. I think this is gonna work. I got this. So I went down to my aunt's house and I broke into her house, man. And I mean, the neighbors heard it, so they had already called the police. I no more than got just a couple blocks away, and I got caught. It was one of the most best things for my life at that time. So immediately I went down juvenile. Couldn't go back to mom's because she's on one. None of my other family members would take one. I had my aunt. She ended up coming up and seeing me, and she's like, hey, do you really want to change? And I'm like, yeah, I really want to change. I just want it out. And so she ended up taking me in, and she gave me a chance. And she was real strict, and she was real hard, and she bust me all the time with weed and stuff. She'd throw it out. She'd pull the probation officers in there. They take me back for 2 days. I get my mind right. I go back. She was on me all the time. But what it taught me is that I could possibly live without using. And it was just a small amount of time that I quit using, but it was like, oh man, there's a possibility that I might be able to not have to do this for the rest of my life. I ended up getting a GED. She got me into college, and I actually got over half my classes done for registered nurse. And so I was on my way. Things were going good, but I decided to get back with the baby mama after probation ended. And things went okay for a little bit, but because I didn't have no relief system, no accountability. I don't have what I have here. And so it didn't take long for just the pressures of life to get back on top of me again. And from from having the house, the car, the kid, we ended up moving out of her mom's. We moved into a trailer park. The across the street neighbor was cooking meth. And then it didn't take much more long, a couple of drinks, and on a bad night, there I was getting high again. The bad thing was I was sitting there trying to do anatomy and physiology 1, and I was high as a kite. There's 217 bones in the body connected to I was like, oh my God. I was just like, it wasn't working. And I knew right then and there, man, I was like you're done for again. So my thing was as soon as I got high, I quit doing jobs, I quit doing school. My mind went to either we're gonna cook something or we're gonna sell something, we're gonna make some money. And that works out real good for a little bit, but it always becomes living to use and using to live, and the next thing you know, you're out there doing whatever it takes. So give her a flower, dude. And so there for a while, man, I was out there twisting off. Then I go and I get to jail for a little bit, and I get a little bit of clean time. Then I'd end up going back to jail, and then I get out of jail, and then I go back to jail, and I just ended up becoming a constant relapser. I would relapse I would get a check, and then after that check, then I'll be back to using again. Or I might get 6 months, and I might get the car and everything back, and then I might go and have some drinks, and then the next thing you know, I'm relapsing again. And so I just became the normalty that I was gonna relapse. My family had given up on me. They didn't want me coming to their house. They didn't want to give me no more 2-week vacations. They didn't want to give me no more chances. Finally, I went to jail one time, and I got my stuff straight for about 2 years. And basically, it wasn't that I got it straight. I just moved to a different area, and I wanted to stay clean, but I was still using. And I also became an alcoholic at that time. I was drinking all the time, but I was clean though, because I wasn't using anything hard. And about that time, I found pills, man. I started finding because it was cool. It's just pills, dude. It was like Xanaxes and hydrocodones, and that's gangster, man. That's cool stuff, dude. So I started taking pills, and that addiction in itself just became just balls to the wall again. Before I knew it, I was like, I couldn't get up and go to bed without having a pill. I couldn't, if I woke up, I was sick, I was nauseated, I could not move, function, or live without having another hydrocodone in the morning. And it happened so fast, it was just within months that I didn't even notice it. It was like I was taking 2, then I was taking 4, then I was taking 5, then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna quit this because it's costing me too much money. And I was hooked, and I was like, oh my God, I need more. I have to have more. So it became 4 or 5 years, just continuously pills and alcohol, just all the time, every day. That was the thing. I even beat my girlfriend up one time, pilled out, drinking. It's just no excuse, but it happened. And I went to jail for about a month. And after I got out, the lawyer told me what to do so I could get this case to go away. And I was facing like 5 years over the whole situation. And so I did whatever I could. He said, you make her happy and you make her real happy. But in the meantime, I want you to go to AA and I want you to try this out. And so I went and tried AA, but it was just for somebody else. I was just doing it to make them happy. And so it was real cool. They welcomed me in, dude. They bought me a big book the first day. They're like, keep coming back. And it was real cool and everything, but like, it wasn't for me. And I didn't know how desperately I needed it. So I was just doing it for them. And so instantly it didn't work because it was taking up too much time, and it wasn't what I needed or what I wanted. And so eventually I didn't go anymore. And so we moved back. We were living in the Dallas Metroplex area, and we moved back. And I was doing all right. I was just smoking and taking pills. I was highly addicted still. And the baby mama, when we got back here, she started relapsing, and she started going out all the time. And I kept chasing her down, dope house, kept chasing her down. And eventually, one night on a Wednesday night, I was laying there, and I was having the thoughts of using again over and over. And I thought on that Wednesday night, I said, usually I just prayed my way out of it. And that Wednesday night, I was like, you know what? If this feeling don't go away, I'm going to use on Friday. Well, when Friday came, the feeling was gone. But I had already made it up in my mind I was going to use again. So immediately I started using again, which immediately I started wanting to move some product again. It was right back into the whole reputation, the whole same thing over and over. You start right back up where you end off. That is so true, man. And so, of course, for like the first 6 months to a year, everything's good. I'm making all kinds of money. Everything's real good. But the more time goes on, it was not enough sleep. It was using too much product. It was just the whole situation. It just became to live to use and use to live. And before you know it, nobody wanted me around. I was sleeping on the ground. I was eating out of trash cans. I was doing whatever it took to get high again. So that went on for quite a while. And my kids became just a situation where if it was Easter, I remembered to call them. If it was Christmas, I remember to call them. But it would go, I would be like, oh my God, I haven't thought about them in months. Like I would remember, it would come Christmas, oh my God, I haven't thought about them since Thanksgiving. Or it might come February 14th, oh wow, I haven't thought about them since January 1st. And so it just became one of them things where I had forgot all about them. So my mom died in between all this because of her active using. She had gotten staph to the lungs, basically, and she died pretty quickly after that. And so, any excuse to continue to use, you just use. My son also has been diagnosed with a rare lung disease, and so, like, even now he's on the Make-A-Wish program. And his destiny is to die. Like there's no beating around it. But thanks to NA, I know that I can make it through this situation because they've taught me a new way to live. But like them situations previous, like when I found out and I was out there on my active addiction, I used it for another reason to use. I used because I was lonely. But I was so blinded by the drugs that I couldn't even realize that if I would just give it up and stop getting high, that I wouldn't have to be lonely anymore, that they would come back into my life. But I was so blinded, it was just another reason to use. And so, so that went on for quite a while. On my 26th birthday, man, I was like, I'm going to do something different today, man. I'm going to do a new drug. So I was in a trap house where there was heroin in this house. And so I begged this dude for an hour and a half straight, man, let me just try a little bit. He's like, man, I'm not giving it to you, dude. I'm not giving it to you, man. I begged him and begged him and begged him. And finally, his old lady gave it to me. And she's like, just a little bit. It ain't going to hurt him, man. So I went off and I smoked a little heroin, dude. And immediately after 2 hits, boom, I was out. My whole birthday was over, dude. I don't remember nothing until the next day. And when I woke up the next day, my whole body craved it and screamed it. And it was just like, I knew right then and there, like that was strong. And that if I ever did that again, I was going to lose every bit of life that I ever had. And my whole body was just screaming for it. So the first thing I said, go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep for like 7 days straight. And when I woke back up, I still wanted it. Kind of like when you're thinking about a cigarette and you got that anxiety, like, ooh, I like a cigarette. I still had that feeling like, oh my God, I still want some heroin. And it was only my first time to try it. So I knew right then and there, like, not ever do that again. A couple of months later went by, man, and I had been trying to call my kiddos because it was Christmas time and it was first of the year. They wasn't accepting my phone calls anymore. And I remember the day that things started changing is, man, I thought everything was good too that day. I had this new girl. We had more drugs. I had this new plug. I'm going to the top now. Everything's changed. I'm going to get my whole life back. Kids, car, house, it's all good now. Everything's great. And so I called my daughter that morning before I left the house. And wow, this time she answered. And it was her. And she was like, I heard her. She was like, Papa, it's my dad. And he said, well, hang up on him then. And she was like, boom, didn't even think twice. She just hung up the phone. Broke my heart, dude. And because at that point, now she's making the decision not to have anything to do with me. It ain't just somebody else telling her to do it. It's her having the decision. So it like broke me, man. And of course, I left out with a new chick, and I'm like, oh, everything's going to be great and everything. And so it was just a normal day, but I know it was God intervening that day because I heard early in the morning with confidence. And I was like, confidence? Like, what does this mean, you know? And so then later on in the middle of the day, I heard it again with confidence as the police is driving past me. And then they whipped in on me and put their guns on me and told me to put my hands above my head. What happened was there was a conversation, just a little situation, just a couple of blocks down. And this dude came out trying to swing on me with a baseball bat, but he had the wrong dude. And immediately he knew and he went back in the house. But someone seen that passing by and called the police. And usually I put it wherever I need to put it, underneath my nuts or in my mouth and swallow it or something. But because I left out in such a hurry, I had it in my pocket that day. And when the cops pulled their guns on me, it was just right then and there. I knew I was going to jail. I started crying immediately. And I told the cop, I said, dude, I know that I'm crying, and it's not because I'm some punk or I'm going to snitch or something. I know exactly how much time you're going to give me for what I have on my pocket. I know exactly how fast it's going to be in the system. I'm crying because I know this is over with. And that I don't have to live like this no more. So I get in the cop car, and right as soon as I'm driving to Potter County, I heard that again, dude, with confidence. And so it just immediately I started thinking, man, like later on, it took me some days in jail to actually get a level head and think, man, with confidence, I'm gonna make it through this time. And so I only spent like 3 months in there, but I just knew like it was really more of my higher power working in me than anything, because I just knew that if I didn't quit that day and stay off of it, that I was never going to see my kids again. And it's really crazy how much of reality that is. If I would have stayed in active addiction, that it probably would have happened. And so, and I knew immediately too is that, and this was out the NA program, that women was my downfall and women was a trigger to me. And one guy was in there and he was preaching to me one day, and he's like, dude, you need to figure out what your triggers are and you need to stay away from them. So it gave me some thought process, and I was thinking, man, I know that girls, alcohol, women triggers, this all triggers, dope houses. Like you can't hang out in a dope house and just hang out because you're lonely and stuff like that. Because I would get lonely and return to the same people, places, and things. It was one of my number one triggers. I would get bored on Friday nights. I'd get tired of doing the same routine. I'd go right back to over there to the same people's house, and in a few hours I was making the same dumb decision. So my higher power already started working on me. Now, I've tried all kinds of higher powers, man, and I'm only talking about this because old Bodie, he said, man, you got to tell the story, man. So I'll tell the story one time, man. I tried, and this is a higher power type situation in these rooms, because it's your higher power, and I respect that 100%, because I've tried a lot of higher powers. My mom was a white witch. I've seen Mexicans do some pretty cool witchcraft. I've seen all kinds of different things. I've tried Satan, man. Tried him. I tried Buddha. I tried anything. I tried like the positive energy and the natural winds, and I'm floating with these two birds and one bird's going the other way. I've tried some stuff, okay? And so, man, I came across this in active addiction, I came across this little dude. He was a little green dude, and he was a Thailand prince. And so I kept him around. And the Thailand people would tell me, they told me, like, if you keep him in a general area, then he'll be happy when there's good conversation, he'll be mad when there's bad conversation. And to feed him something sweet to eat, something sweet to drink, and give him something sweet to smell. So I was hooked, man. I had donuts. I had a little potpourri going for him and everything, man. And I kept him in the living room, and I swore when the conversation was good, I could see this little statue's ears perk up, and he would be real happy. But when the conversation was bad, I could have swore the statue turned around and would face the opposite direction. And so I carried this dude with me everywhere. It went to every trap house. It went to every party. It went right in the living room. It was with everybody. Because I wanted to, have my guy with me. And so one night, man, I was in position, like a transition of my uncle's or whatever. He probably kicked me out that night or whatever. And I left a whole bunch of stuff in his shed. And I'm all the way across town, and it started snowing, and it got real cold, man. And I heard, I'm cold. And I kept thinking, hell yeah, I'm cold, man. It's snowing outside and stuff. So I was like, kept hearing that, man. Like, I'm cold. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm cold, man. It's snowing outside. The wind's blowing. Like, it's cold out here. And I kept hearing this, man. Day number 2, I'm cold. And I was like, wow, man, I'm cold too. Day number 3 came about, man. It's still, I'm cold. And bam, right then and there, I thought about my little green man. He's over there in my uncle's shed, and it was cold. So I ran all the way across town, like 8 miles, and got the little green man out of the shed, because, man, that little dude was cold. So, man, I've tried all kinds of higher powers, but a lot of people already know that I got the jailhouse Jesus. And so when I got the jailhouse Jesus, man, that just works for me. So definitely would never try to push that off on anybody else. If I would have tried to get clean and had a higher power, I would have turned against anything anybody ever said. So that's always that's what I love about this program, is that it's a spiritual program, not a religious program, because people ain't ready for whatever they're ready for. And they have to get themselves in a different position before they pick that. And so that's just my standpoint on it. After that, man, I was still messing around, just smoking a little bit. And I was on probation. I had 3 years. And luckily, I got a dirty UA. And so what I didn't realize is I was sitting in a little efficiency. It was a 1-bedroom garage, basically. It was real nice and everything, but a bathroom, bedroom, and kitchen. And it was just a real small situation. And I would go to work, and I would come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. My probation officer even showed up one day, and she was like, you stay here all by yourself? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, and you don't do nothing? And I'm like, no. And she's like, you need to go to NA, or you need to start going to the gym or something. And I was like, nah, man, NA's for addicts, dude. And so immediately I shot that down. Like, I was like, the gym? No, man, I'm skinny, man. It's cool. I don't need the gym. And I'm like, oh, NA? No, that's for addicts, dude. I'm cool. I don't need NA. But eventually, what I didn't realize, though, is sitting in that house, is I was almost about to relapse just any day. It was just any day that was going to happen. And so I ended up getting a dirty UA, and they sent me to NA. And that's when my life really changed, because I walked in here and they accepted me really quick. And there was people in pajamas and stuff, and I was all dressed up. I had like slacks and a shirt and stuff, and I was like church ready. And these dudes were just sitting there in pajamas and like, And I was like, oh shit, like, wow, dude, I can fit in here, and I ain't gotta impress nobody. And so it was real cool immediately. And so yeah, man, NA started changing my life immediately. Now I kept using, just smoking, but the thing is I just kept faking it till I made it, because I never tried to accept no clean time tags. I didn't try to get no medallions, nothing like that, but I wanted it. And so I kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And one day I eventually, it's crazy how I got my sponsor, is he told this story. He said how he got his sponsor. He was listening to his sponsor talk one time, and he said, his sponsor said, there I was on a little girl's bike, riding it through snow to go get my next drug. And I was like, and he connected with that, and I connected with that, and I was like, oh my God, that's my guy right there. So I ended up connecting with Sean, and man, that ended up being the greatest thing. You don't know how your higher power might work out in your lives, but his kids and his wife and everything, they're all from Childress, and then my kids were in Childress, so we'd see each other at volleyball games and baseball games, and just all kinds of different functions. Or sometimes we'd be down there on the same weekends. I've heard him have his testimony at the church and stuff like that down there in Childress, and we're miles away from Amarillo, and still being able to have that is just amazing, bro. It's also took me a long time for me to share or work my steps, because I'm still using, so why work my steps? Well, one day I finally got gut-wrenching honest with Sean, man, and what he told me, I can't remember what he said, but what he said was so powerful because he wanted to see me stay clean more than I wanted to see myself stay clean. And I started getting some clean time. I just applied the program. So I applied the program, and it started changing me immediately. And I ended up making it for 9 months. One day before 9 months, I gave it up. I just let a decision before the actual decision change my life. I decided earlier in the evening, and then that's what happened is it ended up later in the day. And so I looked at my phone, and I was literally giving up 9 months. So since then, I've messed up for a little while, and then I turned around and I'm about a week away from 18 months. So yeah, the only thing I got left to say, man, because I love NA, dude. NA has changed my life. I wouldn't be anywhere that I would be at right now if it wasn't for NA, man. And I know that if I go right back, that the misery will be right there where I left off. It won't take long, and I'll be right back exactly where I was at. I wouldn't be here without the NA members. Like it's all the people that continuously show up every day, all the time. Like and all the people that I've met that have changed my life from here to then. I could go on names, but I don't want to point anybody out because everybody has had just a little ripple in my recovery, man. And the things that I love that NA says, these are the 3 things that just keeps me so focused on NA, is it's easier to stay clean than to get clean. That rings so true for me because once I start using, it's over. It's hard as hell. I can't get out of it. I need gel or something. So it's easier for me to just stay this path than to get going in this path again. If I can just save one life, if you could just save one life, wouldn't that be powerful? Because you don't just save one person, you save their parents, their kids, it would be just that would be amazing. And the no matter what club, like no matter what. I mean, no matter fucking what, don't use no matter what. For some reason, when someone said that to me like that, it stuck in my head forever. And so no matter fucking what, don't ever fucking use no matter what. And I mean, no matter fucking what. Don't know why, it stuck in my head just like that. And so all I got left to say, man, is the lie is dead. We do recover. Thank you, guys.
Oh,